Hi everyone, welcome back to the Creatine Show. I'm your host, Rachel Jennings. I've got about 30 minutes in between meetings. It's Friday, so we're going to run through 4 interesting things that landed on my creatine radar this week. Thanks for being here, and also thank you for subscribing. I haven't promoted this channel anywhere, and 12 of you have subscribed in the last couple of weeks. So thank you, nice to see you. And if you want to leave any topics in the comments, please go ahead and give me some suggestions on things that you might want to learn more about in the next couple of weeks. I've got some ideas up my sleeve, but for today we're going to run through 4 diverse little things that have popped up. First of all, I'm going to be answering a question that came in about whether or not you can add creatine to a pancake recipe. Is that going to be efficacious, and is it worth doing that? Second of all, we've had a big announcement in the industry after the Sports and Active Nutrition Summit in San Diego on Thursday. Somebody that I actually know has established a new creatine trade association for the industry, and we'll get into that. That's about Icon, that's a new name. Then we're going to cover about youth and adolescents again, and just review a little bit of information from one of my favourite research papers on this topic from 2021 and what they're actually recommending if creatine is safe for those of us under the age of 18. And the last thing is a new position stand that was released in the last 24 hours, I'm quite sure, which is talking about creatine through the lens of whether or not it can be directly or indirectly classified as an antioxidant or not, and if it's even relevant to talk about it through that lens from a clinical perspective. So let's jump back to that first topic. We had a question come in through our lead nutritionist, which is the amazing Dan Richardson. If you're not following Dan Richardson on Instagram, I would highly recommend. He's also got a couple of episodes from our webinar series if you want to learn more about creatine for youth athletes. I would highly recommend. But somebody asked if it's okay to put creatine in pancakes or not. And so I just want to run through some of the important bits of data and information there. So creatine monohydrate has quite a high melting point, actually. So we talk a lot about whether or not you can put it in liquid for a long period of time, but there's also this other part of the equation when it comes to using creatine in foodstuffs, which is how it behaves in heat. And the melting point is approximately 255 degrees Celsius. If you're a Fahrenheit person, that's about 491. And the standard pancake cooking temperature, if you're using a hob, is going to be about 180 to 190 degrees Celsius. So you're totally safe to add creatine to a simple pancake recipe. I know it was Pancake Day just this last Tuesday. If you celebrate or observe Shrove Tuesday, then you might have been eating pancakes. We did. I didn't add creatine to them. However, this could be a really interesting way to get about 1 gram of creatine into your child's diet. Dr. Darren Kandau has publicly stated on a really great podcast that it's absolutely fine to give even young children about 1 gram of creatine a day, and that it will have great effects on their bodily performance in lots of different ways. And adding creatine to a pancake might be a really great way to add it into their diets. And so, again, it's not going to be impacted by the heat aspect here. I would recommend, if you're using a creatine that is having more of a gritty consistency, to keep the dosage quite low here. I wouldn't add 5 grams of creatine to like a single big pancake. That might not really have a nice texture to it. So use a high quality creatine that's quite fine and easily mixable in your pancake batter. If you're using a Ninja Bullet or a blender to make your batter, that could also help. And of course, I'm assuming here that somebody's going to be making the batter and baking the pancakes straight away. If you did leave it in a wet batter mixture, prepared the night before and leaving in the fridge, then you would have some degradation into creatinine, the byproduct there, over time, which wouldn't offer any benefits at all. So you're safe to put your creatine into a pancake mix. Maybe a nice healthy sort of banana oatmeal recipe could be really nice. And then again, especially for younger children. I think this is a really nice way to emphasize how creatine can be used as an ingredient in the kitchen, not just as a sort of medicinal type of thing that we keep in our supplement drawer, but really using it together with your flour, eggs and milk if you're doing a traditional pancake recipe, and add some creatine in there. Use it as an active part of your cooking routine and your daily recipes, and see how far you can take that. Now, we do get creatine from our meat intake, as I've mentioned before, if you consume fish and red meat especially, but it's only going to be really, really potent in raw meat, of course. So anytime you're cooking meat as well, you're going to be losing about 5 to 15% of the natural creatine content that your meat and fish has. And when you're cooking pancakes, it's really just going to be for 2 to 3 minutes on each side. So I don't have any specifics on actually testing for creatinine in a quick pancake recipe. However, it's going to be less than 5% most likely, comparing that to cooking a piece of meat, which really needs, unless you're eating it very, very red on the inside, needs cooking for a little bit longer than a pancake. So add creatine to your pancakes. Let me know how it goes. I'll probably try this maybe in the next couple of months as well, and we can potentially even put a recipe up on the Generize Instagram perhaps as well. So let me know how you get on there. ICON, the International Creatine Organization and Network. This is something that has popped up on the Nutri-Ingredients website if you're subscribed or have an account there. I know they do have a bit of a wall on some of their content, and you can't read all of it or watch all the videos without having an account. But I love Nutri-Ingredients. They are kind of my go-to for the latest industry information about launches, new products, etc. And they have an event. It was on Wednesday, Thursday, and today, Friday this week in San Diego. It's the Sports and Active Nutrition Summit. And I had heard a little bit that this was going to be going on, but it's now public information, and somebody in the industry called Dave Slagle has established a new 50C6, I believe it is. It's an independent member-led partnership which is going to be acting like an alliance in the industry for creatine brands, I'm assuming manufacturers as well. And it's really going to set a new standard. They're talking about doing third-party verification through SGS, who are of course very renowned for their testing and certifying of all sorts of different processes and final products and what have you. And so I obviously wasn't there, but watched the video on the Nutri-Ingredients website and looked at the page that's up and running for ICON itself. And they're talking about specifically, kind of creating more awareness around purity standards and what that actually means. And I think that this is probably something that our company, Generize, will want to become a member of. I do have some questions around, will the focus just be on purity from an end product, or are they also looking to address purity in terms of manufacturing facilities as well, especially, as Generize moves into a place of having our ingredients being available. This might be something interesting. There's never really been I think they call on their website like a single source of truth for creatine in the industry. I know some other ingredients do have this. Omega-3 already has a trade association, and of course in other areas of food products we've got B Corp, things like fair trade and what have you. And so creatine is definitely ripe for having a bit more of a visually recognizable source of truth for consumers. We've got branded creatines, and then maybe this is going to be a good opportunity to have a larger umbrella that can sit across the whole industry. So let me know what you think, and if this is something that would help also improve people's confidence in terms of using creatine as a supplement. But I'm excited about this, and I'm sure I'll find out more about it in the next couple of weeks as well. If you want to contact them, they're taking early memberships in the next couple of weeks leading up to Easter Monday. So it sounds like there's an exclusive opportunity at the moment to get involved and reach out on behalf of your brand and what have you. So that's exciting, and it's nice to see some new initiatives being set up in the creatine industry. Thirdly, I really want to dive back into this topic about creatine for youth and adolescents, people under the age of 18. There's still a lot of products out there that will say on the back, not suitable for under 18-year-olds. And if you're a mother, you're obviously going to take that seriously because you want to do what's in the best interest of your child. And typically we assume that if such a label is on an ingredient, then there's a substantial reason why. However, I was digging into this a little bit more this week as I was preparing to be on a guest on a podcast yesterday, and this was one of the questions that the host had. And so I pulled up a research piece from 2021, which is a review, and in the summary at the bottom of this research piece, they explicitly state that the science community around creatine has gone ahead and made it known that there's no need to have such a liability statement on creatine products. And in their own words, it says label advisories on creatine products that caution against usage by those under 18 years old, while perhaps intended to insulate their manufacturers from legal liability, are likely unnecessary given the science supporting creatine's safety, including in children and adolescents. So if that single piece of text is not enough to help parents see past that warning on the back of a creatine tub or sachet, I don't know what else is going to make you feel comfortable about it. And we do get a lot of questions about it, and I'm also seeing more and more brands working in this space of creating creatine products that are marketed in a way that will bring a higher level of comfort to parents and be something that is a direct option for those under 18 to purchase. Of course, immediately it's going to be more for youth athletes as well, those that are doing serious competitive training and already having a really good diet to support their performance. And then creatine can kind of fit into that top tier where supplementation comes into play for all athletes, but then especially those under the age of 18. And so, I also understand that about 5 to 20% of high school athletes in North America supplement with creatine, so they're already feeling comfortable and understand that the science of all the benefits applies to them as well. And the ISSN has also stated that there is no harm from younger people consuming creatine, and it's potentially beneficial. So when we're talking about those benefits these days, it's across the lifespan. Of course, if you have any underlying health issues or some conditions that do potentially mean that you need to consult a pediatrician or your coach specifically, then please go ahead and do that. However, I just want to make it clear that there is research and written information out there directly from scientists and people in the industry that do the lab work stating that it's safe. So hopefully this year we can move past some of the stigmas there around under 18-year-olds supplementing with creatine and look to these papers and resources as clear information as well, because it's not just an influencer that can tell you that it's safe. I understand that parents are looking for a little bit more substantial data there as well. So 3 to 5 grams is going to be an absolutely fine, consistent daily dose for youth athletes. And of course, the knowledge needs to come under the supervision of an adult. So mum and dad, coach, etc. So it's very interesting, and this topic is something that I'm really committed to, and we get a lot of inbound as well through some of our partner organisations and directly to Generise too. So let's move on to some new topic that popped up yesterday, and this is creatine through the lens of it potentially having connections to antioxidative benefits. And so we know antioxidants when we think of things like certain fruits that have these anti-inflammatory impacts when we consume them. Inflammation has sort of been quite a popular term, especially in the female health space. I've been recovering from my Hashimoto's diagnosis, which was already about 7 years ago, I think, and that's when I really doubled down on understanding what inflammation is, how it causes certain symptoms and discomforts in the body. And I've never really heard creatine being addressed through this lens before, and it really excites me when I see the research community releasing a paper that brings a little bit of a new angle to creatine. Of course, it all needs to be taken with a grain of salt, and I really hope that we do not just suddenly start seeing influencers on Instagram posting videos about creatine being an antioxidant, because that's really not where we're at right now. But the paper was put together by a really large group of scientists from the current cohort, actually. And it's important to understand that creatine is not an FDA recognized antioxidant because it lacks an established RDI. And so that's going to mean that it's more so looking at the mechanism by which creatine is having this sort of effect on the body, and not lumping creatine suddenly together with things like a vitamin C, for example, that you're getting from your fruit intake, because creatine's really not behaving in the same way. It's more like an indirect antioxidative effect, which is happening by improving mitochondrial efficiency and reducing this sort of electron leak, which is then providing higher protection against oxidative injury and oxidative stress, which is what is causing quite a lot of people in this day and age, through sort of modern lifestyle, diet, lack of exercise, to be just generally not feeling very, very well. So I'm going to go ahead and, definitely follow on this topic. And it's basically just verifying that creatine has potential outside of this sports performance vertical, and perhaps in the future we'll discover more ways in which it's directly linked to overall metabolic health, which is where anti-inflammatory and antioxidative ingredients and compounds and nutrients are really, really strong. And it's interesting. And the final thing that I'll say on this topic is that the ISN's top evidence category for moderate to high quality support in recovery and performance is still where creatine sits. But it's clear that the research is really continuing to kind of spread into lots of different areas to really be able to get to a point, it's going to take years and years. How are we actually defining creatine? Makes me hopeful, because when you start looking at it through some of these other angles, it's going to help the average person really understand why it, I'm biased, but why it should be a key component of your daily nutritional intake through supplementation, and also meat and fish consumption as well. So this is available to read online. It's not behind a journal wall or anything like that. You can read it on your own, and I'm sure that we'll see some feed off content coming from this new little bit of research as well, and I'm here for it. So between those 4 topics, that's what has been on my mind in the last 10 days or so. Next episode will be episode 6, so let me know if there's anything that you want me to cover. I'll also be putting out an episode in the near future about my creatine story, not just my sort of family background with my dad's whole catalyzing moment in 1992, but also just my kind of creatine testimony, being diagnosed with Hashimoto's, and really understanding the benefits that it has, been able to deliver in my life, and help me recover from a pretty intense metabolic burnout, I would say. So I'll be recording that in the near future, and you can expect it. And other than that, have a great day. Thanks for being here, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.